Hello, my name is Joe Ellis. Welcome to American Literature. I'll try to be succinct because I know that you all have a lot of videos to watch today. So this is my fourth year at St. James. I was educated at the University of the South in Sewanee, Tennessee for my Bachelor of Arts, and my graduate degree in English is from Middlebury College. I live on campus here with my wife, Katie, who also teaches English, and our 5-month-old daughter, Britta. I am a yearbook advisor, also do a lot of photography for the school, which much goes into the yearbook and some into the review website. I teach 2 sections of World Lit. I teach 2 sections of sections of American Lit, and 1 section of Introduction to Digital Photography. Obviously, we're engaged in a challenging period for education. In this hybrid learning model certainly presents challenges of its own. I wanted to address some of those really quickly. So it affects the pace of class. I mean, we just in some ways can't get through quite as much as we could if we were all here. So that is something that may have some effect on the curricular choices for the year as well. And I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment, but there may be some things we don't get to that we might in a normal year. So I'm having to be a little flexible as far as our readings for this year. It's important that online students, unless they already got a book through MBS, will need to purchase books as we go. Amazon is probably the best way to do it. And I do send out links directly to the students when it's time to order the next book. So feel free to pester them about that if necessary. Also, routine assessments like quizzes in class are just simply more complicated in this era. So we're probably doing a bit less of that than we would in a normal year, but I'm still thinking of alternate assessments, and we are still doing some kind of routine reading quizzes and reading questions and things like that. And of course, there's just a lot more screen time for those online students. And so that's something that I try to be mindful of, but is one of the challenges that is somewhat inevitable, I think. If students are learning online, they're going to be looking at a computer a lot. But I'm not unaware of the difficulties there. Also, it's simply just more difficult to meet with students than it is during a normal year. So especially if you have a student who's online, I've told them this, and feel free to reiterate it. If they can just set up a time with me, we can almost always make it work. It's harder to find the time in certain ways, but I have 2 free periods during the day that may overlap with theirs. There are one of the nice things about the fact that we're using Teams the way we are is that it's easier to meet virtually. So that is perhaps an option for on-campus students, and then for online students, we can sometimes do evenings. Point is, there's ways of working it out, but do encourage them to communicate and ask for help if they need to, because for many of them, it's not as simple as just popping into my room like it would have been in a previous year. So things that we've been trying to do to overcome some of the challenges are breakout groups and teams. So we actually will have sort of small groups that meet online. So the students in class will have their computers, and the ones out of class will, of course, be on their computers. And I try to mix those up so that online students are still interacting with in-person students to kind of maintain those connections that they've built in their time here. And I'm actually pleased to say better than I expected, I think. I have the students up on my smartboard who are at home so that the in-class students can see them and that they can talk to each other in something that approximates face-to-face. But it's actually been more organic than I anticipated, so that's good. And then, of course, I'm trying to incorporate more visuals, slideshows, videos than I would, even because I think that is easier on online students than just having to always listen for 50 minutes. It's frankly easier to do that because we already have the smartboard up and going, and we're all looking at the screen anyway. So very quickly, American Lit is aligned with history here at St. James. So we go in roughly chronological order, starting with 18th century literature. We actually did start with a more contemporary summer reading book for a couple of weeks, but now we're into Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville, Edgar Allan Poe, the Transcendentalists. We'll read The Crucible next, Arthur Miller's play The Crucible, which is of course written in the 1950s, but is dealing with the Puritan colony of New England and Massachusetts much earlier than that. And it fits in nicely with the Transcendentalists, with Hawthorne especially. And that's a book that's still quite interesting and relevant today. If you know anything about it, it's sort of a parable in a way for the communist witch hunts of the 1950s, and it's still something that we see everywhere in social media and in contemporary society. These sort of purges that happen. So it's got interesting levels of historical overlap going on in the Crucible. We'll do some poetry, a poetry unit in the winter. And Great Gatsby in the second semester, among other things. We'll end up reading some James Baldwin, Flannery O'Connor, David Foster Wallace. Throughout all of this, though, one of the themes that I really try to emphasize with the kids is that of individualism and community as an American tension that shows up in almost all of this literature. So feel free to ask them about that, what they've been learning about individualism and community, which of course is also something that is very present, that tension in the news every day in American politics and American daily life. So I think it's very relevant. Of course, we're working on writing. So we started out working on thesis writing and introductory paragraphs at the beginning of the year. And they just recently turned in their first full take-home essay on Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Minister's Black Veil. So in this class, just big picture, they're learning concrete skills, of course, but what I want them to do more than just memorize knowledge is pick up these skills, right? To be able to have college transferable skills, or skills even that they'll just need for next year. So critical thinking is important, of course. Being able to communicate clearly is important, of course. Being able to make connections between ideas that don't, on the surface, seem like they're related. These are the things that we're doing day in and day out. Again, in the interest of time, I will cap it off there, but do know that if you need to get in touch with me, my St. James email address is the best way to do that over something like Blackbaud. But Blackbaud is what the students will be using for assignments almost all of the time. So if there's ever any confusion about where they're supposed to be submitting something or where they're supposed to be looking for an assignment, Blackbaud is usually the correct answer. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and thank you for your attention. Goodbye.